Evelyn Carter froze as Renee Carter's voice cut through the quiet of the funeral home. "You need to leave now," she said, each word measured and cold. Michael Carter, standing beside his wife, nodded without a word, his face blank and unreadable. Evelyn's heart clenched, but she did not shout. She did not protest. Instead, she slowly lowered herself into the nearest chair, hands folded tightly on her lap, eyes scanning the room filled with mourners who seemed oblivious to the tension at the table. The polished oak casket gleamed under the soft lighting, and the faint scent of lilies lingered in the air, a delicate reminder of the loss that had brought them all together. Outside, the wind tugged gently at the flags, a soft whisper against the quiet hum of the city. Evelyn's mind replayed the past week, the preparations she had made, the arrangements for the funeral, the invitations sent, the catering confirmed, and yet here she sat, treated as an intruder in her own son's home. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second echoing louder in the stillness, and Evelyn felt a strange calm settle over her, a quiet observation of the scene unfolding. Renee moved with precision, adjusting flower arrangements, making subtle notes in her planner, while Michael engaged in polite conversation with distant relatives, avoiding his mother's gaze entirely. Evelyn noticed the small details, the crease in Renee's blouse, the tight line of her jaw, the controlled manner in which she directed the staff. Every motion was deliberate, every glance carefully placed, and Evelyn's mind catalogued it all silently. She recalled how she had once nurtured these relationships, prepared holiday dinners, hosted birthday celebrations, and attended countless school recitals and sports events, always putting family first. Now, the realization sank in that her years of devotion were being disregarded in this very moment. She inhaled slowly, noting the faint chill in the air, the muted tones of the organ playing softly in the background, the low murmur of guests moving about the room. Her gaze fell on the polished mahogany floor, reflecting the subdued light like a calm lake disturbed only slightly by ripples, mirroring the turmoil she felt inside. She did not speak. She did not move abruptly, yet every fiber of her being was aware, every sense attuned to the subtle manipulations and silent messages being sent by those she had once trusted implicitly. Evelyn's thoughts drifted to Michael as a child, his small hand in hers as they walked through the park, the way he had once looked to her for guidance and comfort, and a faint ache passed through her chest. Yet, even as the sting of betrayal pressed upon her, she maintained her composure, a quiet sentinel observing the shifting dynamics, noting every interaction, every whisper, every subtle glance. The air felt thick with unspoken words, the kind of tension that builds in a room where loyalty is questioned and alliances are silently tested. Evelyn's hands tightened around the edges of her purse, a simple, familiar object grounding her in the reality of the present moment. She allowed herself a measured breath, the coolness of the polished wood under her fingertips steadying her racing thoughts. Time moved deliberately, and with each passing second, Evelyn mapped the subtle maneuvers of her daughter-in-law and son, understanding that this display of control was calculated, an assertion of power at a moment when vulnerability should have prevailed. She remembered her late husband's voice, calm and reassuring, guiding her through life's trials, and in that memory, she found a thread of strength she could not see in the present room. Evelyn remained seated, a composed observer, her presence quiet but unyielding, watching as Renee continued her orchestrations, Michael's compliance evident yet unspoken, and the guests remained oblivious to the storm simmering beneath the surface of what should have been a solemn and unified moment. The chapel doors opened slightly with a whisper of movement, letting in a soft streak of sunlight that caught the edges of the floral arrangements, and Evelyn noted it without comment, cataloging the light, the shadows, the angles, as if each element might later serve to tell the truth of this day. She did not cry. She did not demand recognition. She merely existed in that space with a clarity born of decades of experience, a careful watching, a patient recording of every slight, every gesture, every controlled reaction that revealed more than words ever could. In her mind, she made quiet notes, mental annotations of Renee's precise actions, Michael's subdued agreement, the way they positioned themselves between her and the guests, The subtle cues of exclusion and authority, all carefully observed, all silently acknowledged. Evelyn felt a cold, steady awareness settling over her. A clarity that would guide the days to come. A sense that while she appeared passive, her mind was fully engaged, cataloging the events with an accuracy born of both pain and experience, a measured patience that would not go unnoticed in the unfolding story of her family dynamics. Evelyn remained seated, her hands resting lightly on her lap, as the quiet hum of the mourners continued around her, the subtle rustle of dress fabric and soft footsteps filling the air with a delicate tension. She observed Michael and Renee moving among the small clusters of family members, exchanging polite words, smiles that seemed too practiced, gestures measured with care. And yet every motion carried the weight of intention. Outside, the gray sky pressed against the windows, the occasional gust of wind causing the leaves on the oaks in the parking lot to shimmer and rustle, a reminder of the steady passage of time beyond the chapel walls. Evelyn's gaze swept the room, noting the polished silver candelabras, the neatly arranged program pamphlets, the soft glow of light from the chandeliers reflecting on the cream-colored carpeting, all arranged to present an image of order and grace. Yet beneath it, she perceived a subtle orchestration, a careful shaping of the environment to exclude her influence. Her thoughts drifted to the past weeks, to the preparations she had undertaken, the lists of guests, the flowers chosen with attention to color and scent, the seating arrangements she had meticulously confirmed to ensure everyone felt included and comfortable. And now, those plans seemed almost irrelevant in the face of the silent assertion of control displayed by Renee. Evelyn noticed the subtle shifts in attention, the way Renee guided conversation, interjecting at moments that would naturally draw Evelyn in, steering focus elsewhere. As though rewriting the narrative of the day in real time, Michael's quiet compliance added to the effect. His polite nods and brief comments reinforcing the impression that Evelyn's presence was secondary, almost peripheral, and yet Evelyn remained poised, her spine straight, her chin lifted just enough to observe without drawing undue attention. She reflected on her decades of experience in family dynamics, the countless holidays she had hosted, the birthdays, the graduations, the dinners that had brought family together, and recognized that the patterns she had once unconsciously accepted were now clear, deliberate, and executed with precision. She allowed herself to take in the expressions on the faces of other attendees, noting their polite smiles, the way they glanced briefly at her before returning to Renee's guidance, unaware of the subtle power struggle unfolding in the quiet moments. Evelyn's awareness extended to the smallest details, the angle of a hand resting on a chair, the tilt of a head during conversation, the way light reflected off the polished surfaces, each element adding to a mental map of influence and exclusion. She felt no outward agitation, no rush to respond, only a calm recognition of the situation, an internal cataloging of behavior, a patient understanding of intentions, a quiet readiness for the moments that might follow. The faint scent of roses from the floral arrangements mingled with the soft aroma of coffee from the reception table, grounding her in the physical present while her mind traced the intricate web of relationships, alliances, and subtle assertions of authority. Evelyn's posture remained relaxed, her breathing steady, as she internalized the complexities of the room, recognizing the deliberate choices of Renee and Michael, without allowing them to unsettle her composure. She thought of the letters her late husband had written, the soft encouragements, the guidance he had provided, the lessons in patience and observation, and drew a measure of quiet strength from them. She adjusted the cuff of her sleeve, smoothed the hem of her skirt, a small gesture of control, a reminder to herself of her autonomy even amidst the careful manipulation of others. The room continued its soft activity around her, the muted conversations, the clinking of glasses, the low hum of the air conditioning, each sound a background to her silent observation, each motion reinforcing her perception of the unfolding narrative. Evelyn did not speak, did not interrupt, did not assert, Yet her awareness was complete, her mind noting every interaction, every look, every subtle command, every acquiescent nod. In that quiet, measured observation, she began to plan, not with anger, not with haste, but with the careful deliberation that came from decades of experience, recognizing that the day's events, though orchestrated to diminish her, were also an opportunity to understand, to learn, and to quietly prepare for the steps that might follow beyond the immediate moment, ensuring that her presence and influence, though understated, would not be ignored in the larger story of her family's unfolding dynamics. Evelyn shifted slightly in her seat, her gaze drifting toward the family photographs lining the walls of the reception room, each frame capturing moments of birthdays, vacations, and quiet evenings together, now shadowed by the tension that filled the air. She noticed the subtle interactions around her, the way Renee moved deliberately to engage certain relatives while leaving Evelyn with polite nods and fleeting smiles, a careful orchestration designed to maintain appearances while asserting control. Michael lingered nearby, offering help to guests with gestures that were efficient but distant, his eyes seldom meeting his mother's, a quiet acknowledgement of the alignment he had chosen without speaking a single word. The polished wood floor reflected the soft overhead lighting, amplifying the movement in the room, the clinking of coffee cups and the soft shuffle of shoes adding texture to the otherwise hushed ambience. Evelyn's mind traced the sequence of events that had led to this day, remembering the careful planning she had invested, the invitations sent weeks in advance, the arrangements for seating and refreshments, and the hours spent ensuring the environment would be welcoming, all contrasted against the quiet exclusion she now experienced. She noticed Renee's hands adjusting a centerpiece, the subtle tilt of her head while engaging a guest in conversation, the precision with which she guided attention away from Evelyn, and in that observation, Evelyn cataloged the behaviors with a calm clarity, noting intention and effect without outward reaction. The fragrance of fresh flowers mingled with the faint aroma of pastries from the buffet table, a sensory detail that anchored her in the physical present, while her mind processed the layers of social maneuvering and unspoken hierarchy. Evelyn reflected on the countless meals she had prepared, the family gatherings she had hosted, and the celebrations she had arranged with meticulous care, each one now a quiet testament to the effort that had gone unrecognized and, times, unappreciated. She allowed herself to notice the smallest elements, the angle of a chair, the placement of napkins, the casual positioning of hands, all signaling authority and subtle exclusion, each detail reinforcing her understanding of the careful choreography unfolding. Her breathing remained steady, her posture composed, a deliberate presence that contrasted with the controlled motions of those around her. She thought briefly of her late husband's gentle counsel, his reminders to observe, to understand, to choose patience over confrontation, and she drew upon that memory to anchor herself amidst the subtle tensions. Evelyn adjusted the cuff of her sleeve, a small gesture of control, a personal acknowledgement of her dignity and awareness, while she continued to watch, noting alliances forming, patterns of interaction, and the silent agreements that shaped the room. Time passed quietly, each movement observed and mentally recorded, the soft hum of conversation forming a backdrop to her internal mapping of influence and exclusion. Evelyn did not need to speak to assert presence. Her quiet, deliberate attention communicated a measured power, a recognition of the dynamics at play and a preparation for the subtle action she might take later. The room continued to move around her, a ballet of polite interactions and controlled gestures, and Evelyn remained fully aware, cataloging the subtleties, appreciating the skill involved in the orchestration, and quietly preparing herself for the moments beyond this reception where her observations might translate into carefully considered action, a steady patience that belied the depth of her understanding and the strength of her resolve. Evelyn excused herself quietly from the reception area, moving with measured steps toward the quieter hallway that led to the small lounge adjoining the main room. The muted chatter of guests, the soft clinking of glasses, and the gentle hum of conversation formed a backdrop against which her thoughts sharpened with clarity. She settled into a corner chair, her hands lightly resting on the armrests, eyes scanning the room she had just left, observing Renee guiding conversations with a practiced ease, Michael offering brief nods and polite words, all orchestrated to maintain appearances and assert influence without drawing attention to the underlying tension. Evelyn reflected on the sequence of interactions she had just witnessed, noting the subtleties of exclusion and the careful positioning of attention, recognizing the deliberate patterns that had developed over the past weeks, months, and even years. The faint scent of polished wood mingled with the aroma of coffee and soft pastries, grounding her in the physical environment while her mind traced the underlying dynamics, each movement and glance cataloged with precision. She thought back to the years of hosting gatherings, planning celebrations, and attending countless events, her presence always aimed at nurturing connection, and contrasted them with the calculated distancing she now experienced, a quiet recognition of the shift in authority and control. Evelyn allowed herself to notice the smallest details, the slight furrow of Renee's brow as she guided conversation, the angle of Michael's posture as he navigated polite engagement with relatives, the way hands rested lightly on table edges, the positioning of chairs, all subtle signals of influence and hierarchy. Each observation fed into Evelyn's internal mapping of relationships, the silent agreements, the unspoken rules, and the nuanced power dynamics at play. She maintained a steady breathing pattern, her posture composed, her expression calm, signaling presence without confrontation, absorbing every detail with measured awareness. Memories of her late husband surfaced, his advice to watch and understand, to observe patience and subtlety over immediate reaction, and she drew quiet strength from these recollections. Evelyn considered the implications of each interaction she had witnessed, anticipating how they might unfold in future gatherings, the ways in which authority and attention were being subtly redirected, and the ways in which she might respond with quiet deliberation. She adjusted the cuff of her sleeve and smoothed the hem of her skirt, small gestures of control and self-possession, a reminder to herself of her enduring agency in the situation. The soft glow from the adjoining room illuminated the polished surfaces, casting gentle reflections on the walls and floor, and Evelyn noted them as part of her mental map, each light and shadow reinforcing the physical reality of the room, while her attention remained on the human interactions that defined the moment. She did not speak, did not interrupt, did not assert loudly, yet her awareness encompassed the entire scene, cataloging gestures, glances, and movements, the subtle choreography of influence and perception unfolding around her. Time seemed to move with deliberate slowness, each second allowing Evelyn to observe, to analyze, and to quietly understand the interplay of personalities and intentions, the measured behaviors of Renee and Michael, and the silent recognition of her presence that informed the choices she would make beyond this immediate moment. Evelyn's gaze lingered on a distant relative, noting their brief glance and quick return to Renee, a subtle indication of the shifting focus in the room, and she allowed herself a faint acknowledgement of the effectiveness of observation and patience, the quiet power inherent in presence and awareness, ready to carry that understanding forward into the moments that lay ahead, ensuring that her perspective, though understated, would remain influential and clear in the unfolding family narrative. Evelyn sat quietly in the corner of the lounge, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of the armrest, as she observed the subtle movements of the room around her. The soft murmur of conversation from the reception filtered through the doorway, mingling with the faint scent of fresh flowers and polished wood, creating a calm yet charged atmosphere. She noticed Renee guiding guests with deliberate gestures, her eyes scanning the room to ensure attention remained focused away from Evelyn, while Michael offered brief acknowledgments and polite smiles, his posture composed but distant. Evelyn reflected on the hours she had spent preparing for the funeral, the careful coordination of seating, the arrangements for flowers, and the planning of refreshments, all executed with meticulous attention to detail, yet now seemingly overshadowed by the precise orchestration of Renee. She observed the expressions on the faces of other family members, their polite nods and quiet smiles concealing their alignment with the subtle power dynamics unfolding. Evelyn allowed herself to catalog each movement and interaction, noting the way hands rested lightly on table edges, the tilt of heads during conversations, the precise timing of interjections, each detail signaling authority and influence without explicit confrontation. The soft light from the chandeliers reflected gently off the polished surfaces of the room, casting a warm glow on the floral arrangements and emphasizing the careful symmetry of the decorations, while Evelyn's attention remained focused on the human interactions, the unspoken agreements, and the silent assertions of control. Memories of past family gatherings surfaced, the holidays she had meticulously organized, birthdays and anniversaries celebrated with care. The sense of warmth and connection she had cultivated now contrasted with the quiet exclusion she experienced in this moment. Evelyn's posture remained composed, her breathing steady, her eyes observing, her mind mapping the complex interplay of personalities, motivations, and intentions. She noted the precision in Renee's movements, the subtle cues of authority in Michael's nods and glances, the polite attentions of other guests, all forming a tapestry of relationships that Evelyn analyzed with quiet clarity. Each small detail, the way a chair was positioned, the subtle adjustment of a napkin, the angle of a hand resting on a table, added to her understanding of the room's dynamics. Evelyn felt the calm confidence that came from experience, a measured awareness that allowed her to see the nuances of influence, the careful planning behind each gesture, and the broader patterns of interaction. She adjusted the cuff of her sleeve, smoothing the fabric with a gentle motion, a small act that reaffirmed her sense of control and presence. The soft glow of sunlight from the windows highlighted the textures of the carpet and the polished surfaces, creating visual contrasts that mirrored the subtle tensions in the room. Evelyn allowed her thoughts to catalog the entire scene, noting the patterns of engagement, the redirection of attention, the deliberate positioning of guests, and the quiet confidence with which Renee and Michael navigated the space. Time moved steadily, each second providing further insight, each observation reinforcing her awareness of the underlying dynamics. Evelyn remained silent, her composure intact, absorbing the interplay of personalities, cataloging subtle signals, and preparing herself for the moments that would follow, understanding that her patient, measured observation was itself a powerful presence, quietly establishing the foundation for the actions she might take in the unfolding days ahead. Evelyn rose from her seat, moving slowly back toward the reception area, her steps measured and deliberate, as she re-entered the space where the subtle tensions continued to unfold. The room, softly illuminated by overhead chandeliers, and the gentle afternoon light filtering through tall windows, seemed unchanged, yet the dynamics were shifting with every interaction she observed. She noted Renee's posture as she leaned slightly to engage a distant relative, the faint arch of her eyebrows signaling control, and Michael's steady nods accompanying polite responses, each gesture reinforcing the deliberate orchestration Evelyn had catalogued earlier. Evelyn's eyes swept across the tables, the polished wood surfaces reflecting the soft lighting, the floral arrangements providing both aesthetic warmth and a quiet contrast to the underlying social maneuvering. She noticed the way guests positioned themselves, unconsciously aligning with Renee's subtle cues, offering small smiles and brief attentions, their awareness guided by the invisible currents of authority and influence. Evelyn allowed herself a quiet moment to consider the weeks leading to this day, the subtle shifts in communication, the minor exclusions, the carefully orchestrated instructions from Renee, all forming a pattern that revealed intent without overt confrontation. The soft murmur of conversation and occasional laughter from the staff arranging refreshments provided a background rhythm, a cadence against which Evelyn measured each action, each glance, each small movement of hand or tilt of head. She adjusted the sleeve of her blouse, smoothing the fabric, a small gesture of control that mirrored the careful composure she maintained internally. Her thoughts traced the sequence of planning, the attention to detail in every arrangement, from the placement of chairs to the selection of linens, and she recognized that the room's current state was not random, but a carefully guided choreography in which she had been subtly positioned. Evelyn observed Michael as he quietly engaged a guest in conversation, his expressions measured, his body language maintaining a polite distance, a controlled alignment that reinforced Renee's silent direction, and she cataloged the subtle interplay with steady attention, noting the intersections of behavior, the small cues that revealed authority, and the silent compliance that supported it. She considered the relationships, the unspoken rules, the patterns that had been reinforced over time, and the way these influenced the current atmosphere. Understanding that her patience and observation were as significant as any overt action, Evelyn's breathing remained calm, her posture relaxed yet attentive, a quiet presence that registered every nuance without disrupting the flow, absorbing the details of interaction and influence with a deliberate awareness. She noted the angle of hands resting lightly on table edges, the shift of weight as guests moved, the fleeting glances exchanged between family members, each small motion reinforcing a narrative that was unfolding silently yet clearly. The faint scent of flowers and the warm tones of the room provided a contrast to the careful orchestration of attention and control, grounding Evelyn in the physical environment, while her mind mapped the social landscape with precision. Each observation added to a growing understanding, a layered awareness of relationships, alliances, and subtle authority, which Evelyn cataloged in her mind with clarity, noting every gesture, every glance, and every movement as data to be interpreted, ready to inform her own measured responses in the moments that would follow, ensuring that her presence, though composed and restrained, carried weight and discernment throughout the day. Evelyn remained seated, her gaze sweeping the room with the quiet patience of someone accustomed to observing long before reacting. The soft murmur of conversation from the reception area continued, blending with the gentle clinking of plates and the faint rustle of fabric as guests moved among the tables. She noted the subtle shifts in body language, the way Renee guided attention toward herself with slight gestures, tilting her head just so, her hand lightly brushing a napkin into place, a demonstration of control executed without overt command. Michael stood nearby, his polite responses measured, his demeanor composed, yet a clear alignment with Renee's quiet orchestration was evident in the subtle nods and gentle corrections he offered. Evelyn's thoughts traced the sequence of events leading to this day, the careful planning she had undertaken for the funeral arrangements, the thoughtful coordination of seating, the attention to detail in decorations and refreshments, all efforts rendered secondary in the delicate social choreography unfolding before her. She observed the expressions on the faces of relatives, their polite smiles and brief attentions reflecting the subtle influence exerted by Renee, their eyes occasionally flicking toward Evelyn, measuring her reaction, yet largely accepting the direction of conversation as determined by her daughter-in-law. The polished surfaces of tables and the warm glow of overhead chandeliers reflected the room's muted elegance, highlighting the floral arrangements and carefully placed table settings, contrasting with the undercurrent of social negotiation and subtle power dynamics. Evelyn allowed herself to catalog every minor gesture, every nuanced glance, the positioning of chairs, the angle of hands, the timing of interjections, all elements forming a clear map of influence and exclusion, each observation noted without interruption, each moment recorded with precision. She drew on memories of decades spent nurturing family bonds, hosting gatherings, attending celebrations, and maintaining traditions, recognizing that her presence and contributions had shaped the family's history. And yet in this moment, the balance of attention and authority was deliberately redirected. Her posture remained composed, her breathing steady, a quiet sentinel in the midst of orchestrated interactions, absorbing the dynamics without overt participation, yet fully aware of every subtle maneuver and social cue. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with the gentle aroma of coffee and pastries, grounding her in the physical environment while her mind mapped the intricate web of relationships and influence, each observation reinforcing her understanding of the current hierarchy. Evelyn adjusted her sleeve, smoothed the hem of her skirt, small acts that reaffirmed her own control and composure, while the soft sunlight filtering through tall windows highlighted the textures of the room, casting gentle reflections on the polished floors and floral arrangements. She remained silent, fully attuned to the quiet strategies unfolding around her, noting patterns, cataloging behavior, and preparing for the subtle action she might take when the opportunity arose. Confident in her patient, measured awareness and the quiet authority she carried simply by observing and understanding the nuances of her family's interactions, Evelyn remained in her quiet corner, observing the subtle flow of activity as the final guests began to drift away, their polite farewells and soft murmurs fading into the background. The gentle afternoon light cast elongated shadows across the polished floor, highlighting the careful placement of floral arrangements, the soft sheen of silverware, and the warm tones of the wooden furniture. She noted Renee's meticulous attention to each departing guest, offering courteous gestures, slight bows of acknowledgement, and precise adjustments to the environment, each motion reinforcing her quiet command over the space. Michael followed suit, his actions measured and deliberate, ensuring the transitions appeared seamless, maintaining appearances while subtly guiding attention and behavior. Evelyn reflected on the sequence of events she had witnessed throughout the day, the careful planning she had executed for the funeral arrangements, the coordination of seating, the selection of flowers, and the preparation of refreshments, all set against the intricate choreography of Renee's and Michael's controlled interactions. Each small gesture, each glance, each tilt of the head or adjustment of a hand became data points in Evelyn's mental map, cataloged with precision and observed without outward expression. She allowed herself to appreciate the patterns, the nuances of influence and control, the silent agreements and subtle exclusions, understanding the depth of orchestration without needing to participate actively. The soft aroma of flowers, mingling with the faint scent of coffee and pastries, grounded her in the sensory reality of the room, while her mind traced the complex web of interactions and relationships, each observation reinforcing her awareness and patience. Evelyn adjusted the cuff of her blouse, smoothed the hem of her skirt, small acts that reaffirmed her dignity and quiet presence, a signal to herself of her composure and control. She noticed the careful positioning of chairs as staff tidied the tables, the gentle hum of conversation as the last guests exchanged final words, the way Renee and Michael's movements subtly influenced the flow and focus of attention, all catalogued in Evelyn's mind with meticulous care. She recalled the many years she had spent nurturing family bonds, hosting celebrations, attending school recitals and sports events, and managing holiday gatherings, each memory providing a contrast to the deliberate manipulation she now observed. Evelyn's posture remained composed, her breathing steady, her eyes alert, fully attuned to the subtle strategies unfolding around her. Time passed with a deliberate, measured pace, each second offering insight, each movement reinforcing her understanding of influence, authority, and social navigation. She allowed herself to quietly observe the shifting dynamics, noting how Renee's control softened slightly as the room emptied, how Michael's demeanor remained polite yet distant, and how the remaining interactions subtly reflected the hierarchy she had witnessed throughout the day. In that quiet, Evelyn felt a sense of calm clarity, a recognition of her own agency, and the patient awareness that, though understated, her presence had not gone unnoticed, preparing her for the measured steps she would take in the coming days, carrying forward the observations, the understanding, and the quiet strength that had guided her through the subtle intricacies of the family gathering. Evelyn lingered in the quiet aftermath of the reception, the room now nearly empty, the soft echo of departing footsteps and muted conversations filling the space with a subdued rhythm. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting warm highlights on the polished wooden floor and reflecting softly off the floral arrangements that remained meticulously arranged. She observed the lingering gestures of the staff as they straightened chairs, adjusted linens, and ensured the final details of the gathering maintained the impression of order and elegance, each motion precise yet unobtrusive, a subtle choreography that complemented the day's orchestrated interactions. Evelyn allowed herself to take in the textures and details, the gleam of silverware, the gentle curve of a vase, the delicate pattern on the carpet. As her mind traced the relationships and influences she had observed, cataloging behavior,
tone,
and posture with careful attention. She reflected on the sequence of her day, from the moment she had quietly accepted her position in the corner of the room, to the nuanced observations of Renee's control, Michael's subtle compliance, and the polite attentions of other family members, all contributing to a layered understanding of the social dynamics at play. Each interaction, each gesture, each small alignment of attention had been noted and filed in her mind, forming a comprehensive map of influence, exclusion, and the quiet assertions of authority that had shaped the day. Evelyn adjusted her posture, straightening her spine and smoothing the sleeve of her blouse, small acts that reaffirmed her presence and composure while maintaining a watchful, observant stance. The faint scent of fresh flowers mingled with the residual aroma of coffee and pastries, anchoring her in the physical reality of the room while her mind traced the invisible lines of connection, influence, and intention. She considered the lessons embedded in the day's events, the ways in which subtle manipulation and careful control could shape perception and behavior, and the value of patient observation over immediate reaction, understanding that her composed attention had provided insight and clarity unattainable through confrontation. Evelyn noted the subtle glances exchanged between relatives, the quiet acknowledgments of Renee's orchestrations, and the understated manner in which Michael reinforced the flow of attention, each small cue contributing to the broader narrative she had quietly tracked throughout the day. Her awareness remained comprehensive, cataloging minor adjustments, the positioning of hands and heads, the angles of body language, and the timing of interjections, all forming a mental record of influence, priority, and unspoken hierarchy. The afternoon light shifted gradually, elongating the shadows across the polished surfaces, highlighting the symmetry of the floral arrangements and the careful positioning of furniture, reinforcing the contrasts between aesthetic order and underlying social tension. Evelyn allowed herself a quiet satisfaction in the clarity she had achieved, the patient understanding of dynamics, the measured cataloging of behavior, and the subtle power of observation that remained wholly within her control. As the final guests exited and the room settled into a calm stillness, Evelyn remained poised, her gaze steady, her awareness complete, her presence quietly asserting dignity, composure, and insight, fully equipped to navigate the unfolding moments of family interactions with deliberate patience and perceptive understanding, carrying forward the quiet strength and measured authority that had guided her through the complex social landscape of the day.